on the unseen realm. I bet it's been pretty good. We're going to detour from that, and we will get back to that next week. Really thankful for prayers for our travels and everything. And we're glad to be back safe and sound. And again, we are thankful to have people to be able to fill in for when we're not here. So this morning, we're going to start with a prayer, but we're going to be in the book of Psalms, the Songbook of Psalms. If you want to go ahead and turn there, we'll be in Psalm 13. What I want to do is, sorry for those sitting over there, if y'all want to migrate this way, you can. I'm going to use whiteboard. We don't have just the whole best setup for a whiteboard up here, but we're going to go through it, and we're going to break it down. And I'm pretty much going to rely heavily on you all to find those necessary things we need to find and determine what this psalm is saying, what this song is about, and we will make some application from that this morning. So let's go ahead and start with a word of prayer. Our God in heaven, we love you, and we thank you so very much for the many blessings. Thank you for this morning where we get to come together and learn more about your word and to gain knowledge from your word to be able to apply it to our lives. Father, we pray for the person involved in the wreck on Vance Blockton. We pray that this man will be healed, God, and if he is not in the right relationship with you, maybe there will be someone to reach out to him, and this will be a moment in his life where he turns to you. God, we also want to say a prayer for those who are not feeling well this morning, for the illnesses that are going around. We pray for those people. God, thank you so much for bringing my family back here so that we can be together again with this church family. God, be with us as we go throughout our day today, as we worship you, as we learn about you, and as we praise you. God, thank you so much for the many blessings in this life, especially the blessing that your Son gave us by giving his life. Father, thank you for Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen. All right, so we're going to be in Psalm 13. What I hope to do is go through. We're going to mark up this text. We're going to color code some things. We're going to outline this text, and then we're ultimately going to apply it to our lives. One of the most important things I always try to do every time I'm studying something is make application. Because what would be the point, really, in studying God's Word if I don't really put it into my life? Sure, we can learn a bunch of facts, we can learn a bunch of historical things, and that's all great, but how is that helping me become a better person of God? And so that's what we're going to do this morning. Now, anybody want to take a guess? There are multiple types of psalms in the psalm book. It was originally used as the Jewish hymn book. This is what they didn't have the Praise the Lord hymnals. They had the psalm book. And they would go through those, and they would chant those, they would sing those, they would study those. Now, there are multiple different types of psalms. You have some praise psalms. You have some songs of ascent. Oftentimes those are said, or believed to be said, as they were ascending into the temple. There is I think about Psalm 120 to about Psalm 134. Don't quote me on that just this morning, but there is a group of songs that they would sing or recite as they were going up into the temple. And what it was they're making their minds get ready to worship the Lord. And so they're upstairs, I think. The teen class is. And so you have those types of songs. You have some really happy songs. You also have some sad songs. Does anybody want to take a guess at what is the technical term that we call these kind of sad, upset songs in the psalm book? Yeah. Lament. I heard lamentation. Lament psalms is what they're called. And now you're thinking to yourself, oh, the book of Lamentations that Jeremiah wrote. You know what he's doing that entire book? Yeah. Complaining. And that's what lament psalms are. are complaining psalms, where the writer, whoever it may be, sometimes David, sometimes unknown, sometimes other people, they're complaining to God. And so, now, why would that be a cool fact for us to know? Yeah. Don't we all complain sometimes to God? We shouldn't be upset about it, because there are times when just life gets overwhelming and we feel like complaining. Well, complain to God. That's a good place to do it, because you're going to see what this person does in their song, and how they complain to Him, but also at the very end, it's going to be important to also how they leave. After they get done complaining to God. And so that's what we're going to be doing this morning. This is Psalm 13. Now, in your Bibles, what does, or who does your Bible attribute this psalm to? David. Most scholars will say that this psalm is attributed to David. But also a lot of scholars will say, we have no idea who this is attributed to. The reason it's given David is because, here's some technical information for you. In the Septuagint, which is, if you ever look up what the Septuagint is, that's just the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. Alexander the Great went through a long time ago in the 200 to 300 BC era and had the Hebrew Bible translated into the Greek language. And that's what we call the Septuagint. It's often seen as LXX. If you ever see that, that's the Septuagint. In the Septuagint, we have, in this heading, it's a Psalm of David. So, is it really a Psalm of David? I don't know. Does it really affect anything? Not at all. So, we have this song. It is a lament song. Spurgeon, Charles Spurgeon, he was a famous pastor back in the day, calls this the How Long Psalm. And so we're going to go through. Now, what I want us to notice, has anybody ever seen like inductive studying or seen on Pinterest nowadays where people are color-coding things, looking for phrases and words that match to help you understand what's going on? Yeah, you probably have. Well, that's what we're going to do this morning, and I've done this multiple times here. And what I want us to do is go through it, match some stuff, but also notice in songs, how many verses do we usually have? Multiple verses, right? And each verse carries with it maybe a different thought, but the same idea, I guess the same main thought, but it has a little bit more about it. Or maybe it's telling a story, or maybe it's teaching a lesson. And that's what we're also going to do with this song, is we're going to go through, and you can actually outline it. You'll see where thoughts are shifting to different areas and different things. And so you'll also learn a lesson in how I put lessons together, and be able to outline a Bible text, and then after it you'll be like, oh, look, there's a Bible class or a sermon that I could use, or whatever. So let's go ahead and read through it. This is the ESV translation. Your translation may read differently, which we'll talk about that as we go through that. Feel free, if you have a different translation, while we're going through, let me know if your word is different. So let's read through it. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say I have prevailed over him. Lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. All right. So Psalm 13. Anybody notice any repeated words, repeated phrases as we went through this? There you go. That one hopefully jumped right out at you. All right. So we have how long? How long? How long? How and most of the time, I don't think it's a specific time, but you also have to understand there's poetry being used here. He's not saying, hey, give me an hour, God, on when things are going to get better. He's just saying, how long is this going to keep going on? Yes. Okay. All right, so we're looking at a time frame, and we are trying to figure out. This may be it. So we are trying to figure out what is he talking about. So what is he complaining about in these first few verses by saying how long? I'm hard of hearing. I was just at Disney World, and there was lots of kids screaming.
Praying for help from his enemies.
Okay. Does he start out by saying that?
No, he just starts out by saying, have you forgotten?
Yeah. Who's he talking to? Who's forgotten him, he feels like? God. Now notice also God's repeated a few times. Oh Lord, right? This particular phrase is repeated a few times, right? You also have, oh Lord, my God. And then he's also going to mention Lord somewhere else. Last verse. There you go. I will sing to the Lord. Okay. So you see Lord used multiple times. Before I get ahead of myself, do we see any other areas where there's repeated words, repeated phrases? I just get so antsy. I want to go ahead and tell you everything. Where else are some repeated words? There is a lot of me. All right. Lots of me's and I's. All right. Which now you know this guy is talking about himself a whole lot. Me's, my's, and I's. And I'm not going to circle all of these probably. But he is talking a lot about himself in this. Okay. And what we're doing is we're just gathering all this information, and ultimately, at the end, we're going to be like, oh, this is what he's saying. All right? So he's talking a lot about me. Anything else you see repeated often in these verses? There you go. Lest. How many times is lest used? There you go. We have lest. Now, does anybody else have a different translation that maybe uses a different word? Or doesn't use a word? That's what I liked about the ESV as I was studying through this. They give you these clues, these key words to help you match things. All right, so we have lest used 3 times. Anything else?
A lot of question marks.
He's got a lot of questions, especially at the very beginning. That'll be very interesting for us to notice. You or your, and that's him referring to God. All right. Now, who's he struggling against? The enemy. How many times is the enemy used? We have it used twice, but he also uses another word that sounds like that. My foes, right? So these are all helping us be able to know what's going on. Now, if I was just sitting down preparing a class for this, I would go through this and I would start noticing, okay, you have all these question marks, you have all these how-longs, and then it seems to maybe shift, and then it seems to shift again. Anybody notice where those shifts are? This is what you call outlining a particular passage or verse or psalm. All right, verse 3. Why do you think there's a shift there?
Still a question, and he's transferring the question over to statements.
There you go. So you would say 1 and 2 is its own group. All right. So then we have verse 3. How long does that group go to? All right, 3 and 4. Why would you make 3 and 4 its own group?
Because there's no break between the two. So.
There's no break. Okay, why wouldn't you go on to verse 5?
Because he has a conjunction there.
Yes, look at that. My favorite word in the Bible, but. right? We have a contrast. Big contrast here. So the thought shifts here. All right? So verses 5 and 6 would then change and be its own group. All right? So now we have 3 different sections. What's really cool about this, if you're a preacher or a Bible class teacher or just somebody who likes to study the Bible, there's 3 points that we could make in a class. And guess what? We're going to make those 3 points today. All right? So now, this first section, all right, what is it mainly about? He's questioning. Who's he questioning? God. He's questioning God. All right? Now, his particular question at the beginning is, how long will you forget me? Right? Forever. How long will you forget me, God? Notice, what does he then ask next? How long will you hide your face from me? All right? Notice, are we really understanding why he thinks God has forgotten him? No. Do we understand why he thinks God has hid his face from him? No. We just know he's complaining right now that, hey, God has forgotten me. Now, notice he then goes to say, how long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? Does anybody's translation have a different word for that word counsel? What is he trying to say here? How long do I have to take counsel in my soul? As I'm studying through this, me personally, I'm going to pause there because that's some interesting language for me. I don't quite fully understand what he's trying to say. So I'm going to pause there and try to figure out what he's saying. Do you all know what he's trying to say?
My Romanian translation says, how long is my soul going to be fulfilled with sorrow?
Okay, so that's cool. In that second half of that verse, how long is my soul going to be fulfilled? Right? My heart is full of sorrow, God. And how long is it going to be like that? How long must I take counsel in my soul?
Advice.
All right, who's giving the advice?
Who's there asking for God to?
Himself, right? He's having to give himself advice. He himself, his own wisdom. So, because he thinks God has hidden his face from him, because he thinks God has forgotten him, who has he turned to? Himself. Let's pause there. How many of us do that? When we think God has forgotten us, there's those times in our life where things get tough, and we think, well, God's not helping me, so who do we turn to? Ourselves. Who has the worst wisdom in the world? Myself, right? Nowhere do we find in the Bible where it was a good idea that wisdom was us, right? Especially when you're looking in wisdom literature. If you read through the book of Job, right? Job had some stuff going on in his life, not great stuff. And it's just fascinating to me, if you go through all of Job, right smack dab in the middle of this book is a whole book on wisdom, right? Why do you think that is? Because we need wisdom when we're going through tough times. Now, Job and his friends were thinking about, how can my wisdom be better? How can I get through this on my own? Mainly his friends were saying, you've done something wrong. You need to figure it out. And so Job was thinking to himself, well, I need to know what I did wrong. I need to figure it out. But we find in Job chapter 28, verse 28, what wisdom is, right? What counsel is, what counsel I need when I'm going through some stuff. Notice in Job 28:28, and he said to man, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn away from evil, that is understanding. So in those times where I'm struggling, I think God has forgotten me, kind of like a Jesus on the cross moment, right? I've never been to that point in my life, but I've been in some low times. I think, man, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I start thinking to myself, I better figure it out on my own. And I start going, and I'm taking counsel in my own soul. I'm thinking, maybe I can turn to this. Maybe I can turn to that. Maybe this will help me get past this. Maybe this will cure my anxiety. Maybe this will help me with my depression. Maybe this will help me get through this trial. Whose counsel am I relying on? My own. And that's not what we need to be doing, right? Where does my own counsel lead me?
The wrong way.
Yeah, the wrong way. I'm just going to be honest. It's probably going to lead you further into anxiety, further into depression, further into feeling of emptiness, right? Because we're trying to fill ourselves with counsel, with wisdom that's from the world. And that's never going to fill that void or that gap that really needs to help us during those times. All right? So we're really into question 3. So he's asking, we're getting a little bit more of what's going on, right? He thinks the Lord's forgotten him. He thinks that God has hidden his face from him. He's now thinking, I need to rely on myself because, look, my soul and my sorrow in my heart is every single day. I'm full of sorrow. So I'm going to rely on myself. Now, we're really understanding in the last question what's really going on and what's really going on in this person's life. He's got enemies, right? His 4th question is called, how long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Well, there's your issue, right? That's really going on. That's why he thinks God has forgotten him. That's why he thinks God has hidden his face from him. That's why he's starting to rely on his own counsel, is because what's happening with his enemies? They're prevailing over him. Now, what's another word for exalted? Yeah, they're getting the better of him. All right, getting better of him. All right. I like simple phraseology. Being lifted up above him, he feels like he's lower than his enemies, right? Now,
So the enemy's winning.
there you go. The enemy's winning. They're being victorious right now. In whose eyes?
His own.
His own eyes. Remember that, right? He's in the middle of this complaint right now. Now, here's a technical term for you that is often used in Hebrew poetry. Notice there's a progression here, okay? Now, what this is called is climactic progression or parallelism. Climactic progression or parallelism. What in the world does that mean? Okay? It just means that there is a progression, or you're learning more each and every time he asks the question, right? It's growing on itself. At the very beginning, it's very vague. We just know he thinks God has forgotten him. Well, why do we think he thinks God has forgotten him? Because his enemies seem to be being exalted over him, right? And so that's what we call this climactic parallelism or climactic progression, as you see going on. Now, who's his enemy?
Everyone around.
Yeah, we really have no idea, but it could be, right? Everyone around him. We see that multiple times throughout the Psalms. People feel like psalmists will say, oh no, everyone around me is doing so much better than I am. Often a psalm I think of is Psalm 73 with Asaph, and he's just looking at the world and how fat and how blessed they seem, and he's thinking to myself, I'm a man of God. Why is this happening to them and not me? And so ultimately his enemies are being exalted over him. What that is, I don't know. I'll give you maybe a clue. We're not really quite understanding of what it is, but I'll give you a clue later on what it may be. But I'm not going to tell you that just yet. What are some of the enemies we face in our life? Satan. Now, yeah.
Pride.
Who has seen Satan like we see in the movies? Okay, so that's the point I want to make there. Satan is the number one foe of all of us. What does he look like often?
Looks like whatever your weakness is.
Yeah, what are some of those weaknesses we may have?
Pride.
Pride is a definite enemy of ours that we could have. What else? jealousy, envy. All right, now we're thinking about all the works of the flesh in Galatians 5. What else? Besides sins, what else could be an enemy that's prevailing over you?
Lack of confidence.
See, and that's not a sin, but that could be a struggle that we have and that we find as an enemy, right? That could push us away from being bold about reaching out with the gospel to people or serving in any capacity. What else?
Lack of understanding.
A lack of understanding, which would then in turn lead to a lack of confidence. Discouragement could lead to a lot of different things. And being discouraged, man, you could be knocked down and you could feel like everybody around you is doing so well. And you're thinking to yourself, how am I not doing that well? And I'm just going to stay down in the dumps and I'm going to be there for a long time and I'm just going to be discouraged all the time. Okay? What about illnesses? Anybody getting older in their life and not able to do the things they used to do? Right? Could that be an enemy that you're struggling with? I'm just telling you, I'm only, 34? And I can't do the things I did 10 years ago. And I've made, no, I'm not the youngest person in here, but that's certainly an enemy of mine because I'm not able to do the things that I'm thinking, man, I used to do all that. I used to play college football, right? I used to be able to hit people and not feel it the next day. Now if I accident, my shoulder hurts, my wrists hurt, just being a coach and having to demonstrate things. I get done, my knee's hurting, I'm having to walk around like this, right? And that can be an enemy of mine, can it? My own physical health, but sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's illnesses, cancer, right? Dementia, just being older to where people are thinking to themselves, why is this happening to me? Why am I having to go through this? And that can cause us to start questioning God and complaining to God. God, why am I having to go through this? Some people may even get to the point where it's like, I just want to go now. I don't want to keep going through this. So certainly illnesses, finances, jobs, shame, all of these different things can cause major issues in ourselves, in our lives. And I was asking, we were studying about this. People can certainly be enemies. Who are some of those people that can be enemies? It's not always the bad guy, right?
Sometimes it will be your friends.
There you go. Sometimes it can be the friends. They can be your enemies. And they can be a big part of that discouragement that some of us face.
Job's friends are the number one.
Yeah. Not only Job's friends, but yeah. Not only is Job's friends, but who else? His wife, the one you would think would be closest to him. Now, I don't know what kind of marital issues they had going on, but hey, she was all about just saying, just give up now, right? Don't go through this anymore. So certainly those closest to us can be sometimes our biggest enemies. There's a small lesson in itself. Pick the right people to be around. But also our past can be an enemy of ours, right? Our past can cause us to not feel like we're good enough to maybe serve at a capacity with the church, be involved in evangelizing to others, spreading the gospel, because we think, well, nobody's going to listen to me because I was a terrible person and I'm from around here and people know me and people know my name, and so I better not say anything because they'll just say, oh, I know who you used to be, right? So that can certainly be an enemy of ours that is taking over us. And the last one that I put down was present circumstances. How can present circumstances cause issues or be an enemy of ours to where we start complaining to God? Yeah, well, I'm broke. Man, I got no car. I'm broke. Got no money in the bank. Even though I do have money in the bank, but it's not the amount I want in the bank, right? Oh, there goes my counsel again. I need more money, right? And we start realizing, man, I've got all these things hindering me. And so I start complaining to God, why is my life like this? That person over there is doing way better than I am, and I haven't seen them ever go to church, let alone even speak about God. but yet they've got one of those brand new Mercedes SUVs, even though some of y'all think Mercedes SUVs are bad. But they've got one of those brand new Mercedes SUVs that got the cool light up symbol on the front. They live in the ritzy part of town. They have all of this money. Their family is always well dressed. They always smile. They have the best pictures on Facebook. Meanwhile, I'm over here and I'm scared to open up my mailbox because there's going to be a bill in there that I know I can't pay for. My 2001 Toyota Camry is on its last leg over there, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, I'm worthless, right? Did Paul ever think about that when he was in prison? No, and that's someone I think about when I think about who could have had the biggest enemy of present circumstances is Paul, especially when you go through the letter of the Philippians where he's got all these issues that he could be complaining about and he could be crying about, but he's focused on other people. Okay, so we're done with those things. So what does he do? After he starts complaining, he does what? In verse 3. Yeah, and I would maybe instead of saying he asks God, does he ask God? I don't think he asks God. He's telling God, hey, God, remember me, your servant down here. Consider and answer me, O Lord my God, to do what? Lighten up my eyes. Some translations will say enlighten. The idea behind this, there's multiple ways you can understand this. In old Hebrew scripture writing, this would be more like I'm sick and I want to be healthy. Literally brighten up my life, lighten up my eyes. Most of the time when you get sick and you have an illness, your eyes get darker, you just look terrible, right? And so he's trying to say, and most of the time that's why people will think that this enemy of his was actually an illness. It's because he's telling God to lighten up my eyes. Now that could also mean the idea of bring enlightenment to me, help me to understand what's going on right now in my life, because, boy, it's rough right now. My enemies seem to be being exalted over me. However, there's not going to mess up anything going on here. Just notice he wants to have his life better, whether that be through physical healing of making him feel better again, or to have this enlightenment, this understanding of what's going on in his life. So that's what he's asking God. What does he tell God is going to happen if that doesn't happen? Lest I sleep the sleep of death, lest I die, which right now probably doesn't seem like a horrible choice because of what he seems to be having going on in his life. Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed over him, lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. He has gotten to the point in his life where this idea of shaken means to fall. This enemy of his, this issue in his life where he thinks God has forgotten him, God has hid his face from him, God has seemed to let his enemy be exalted over him. He's gotten to the point where now he's about to be shaken if God doesn't do something for him, right? And there's a lot of times in our own lives where we command God to do something for us, and we give him kind of this reasons or this list of, you better do this now or else this is going to happen, right? God, I need you to fix this now or this is going to happen. And his 3 reasons were, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Maybe he was that ill. Lest my enemies say I have prevailed over him. Lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken, fallen, or anything along those lines. Or die, right? So he's crying out to God for that thing. But notice the shift, right? Our contrasting conjunction. Love that, right? Best word in the Bible. Here we go. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. What in the world? You were just complaining and doing all that whining up here, but now how's he talking down in verses 5 and 6? Yeah. Not just in a way. He's 100% praising and worshiping. Hey, God, I have trusted in your steadfast love. I know your love is unwavering. You are always there for me, right? My heart shall rejoice. Why? Because of your salvation. You're going to save me, right? He may not save him from this illness, right? But what does he know he's going to save him from? Ultimately, this earth. In verse 6, I will sing to the Lord. Why? Because he has dealt bountifully with me. What I love about this so much is that, yes, there is a huge complaint at the beginning of this, right? He's crying out to God that, man, there's some stuff going on in my life. God, I don't even think you know who I am anymore. You've forgotten me, right? And then he goes on to say, here's my request. Here's what I want you to help me with. Lighten up my eyes. Either that's to understand things going on, but then he gets into this whole idea of, yeah, but I remember actually, you haven't forgotten me. You haven't hid your face from me. You've always loved me, God. You've always saved me. You've always brought this salvation, this refuge for me. And because of that, I'm going to sing to the Lord, right? I'm going to praise you. I'm going to focus on you because you have dealt bountifully with me. It didn't sound like he was being dealt bountifully with God by God up here.
He had forgotten who he was.
Yeah. And how often does that happen with us? In the middle of trials, how often do we forget who we are?
It's almost like he's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, and a lot of times you read through these Psalms, you'll see a lot of emotional roller coasters, right? But are we any different, right? When we go through some stuff, we hit the dumps, right? We go to what we call rock bottom. And down in rock bottom, who knows what we're thinking? Who knows what we're saying? Who knows how we are reacting? Probably not the best. Probably a lot like this guy, right? Where we start complaining to God, God, how long is this going to happen? I feel like you hate me. Does God hate you? Did God ever forget you? Did God ever hide his face from you? Now, if you're in a right relationship with him, no, he hasn't hidden his face from him. But what has happened? Life. Can't life just throw us some curveballs? We swing and miss and we fall on the ground, right? But he hasn't left us. Yes, we may get that phone call that we have an illness that's incurable and we only have so long to live. We may get that phone call from our job that says, hey, we're having to do some budget cuts right now. Things are tough. You were on the chopping block. Sorry, don't come in tomorrow. Oh, that would be bad, right? What if you're a single family income and you were that income, right? That could be tough. And then we start thinking to ourselves, wow, why is this happening? How long is this going to God, why did you forget about me, right? And so we do this same thing where we will complain and we will do all of these different things because we feel like that when we're in those moments, right? But sometimes it's a good thing to get it out, right? He gets it out. He lets him know. He makes a request from God. But then ultimately, how does he end it? I love you, God, right? I know I've got some issues going on. I know you're going to help me out. You've always helped me out. I don't even know why I'm complaining, but it just felt good to get off my chest. Thank you for listening to me, God. Love you, right? Isn't that what that sounds like? If that was just put into 20-something terms, and we were able to, we don't talk about dealing bountifully with me. God, you've blessed me a lot, right? That's maybe the language we would use. God, thank you so much for your wonderful blessings in my life. I know I was complaining up there earlier in this prayer, but hey, now I understand. I just needed to get off my chest. Is that a bad way to pray? Or is God going to get mad at me if I let him know I've got some stuff going on in my life? No.
Wants you to tell him
Yeah.
that.
You think he was probably very happy. He was happy enough to put it in a psalm book for us to read later on in life, right? To let us know this guy had some issues. This guy let his issues out. He even made a request from God. Consider and answer me. Remember me. Had he forgotten him? No. But that's what he thought. And so he says, consider and answer me. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemy say I prevailed over him. Lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. there's going to be those times in our life where we feel this way. And I would encourage you, write it out, right? I'm always an advocate. If you have the notebook on you or something, or maybe you're at home and you're just feeling overwhelmed, write out a prayer to God, right? It may look like this. I would also encourage you, take out Psalm 13 and read it and pray it and put yourself in that person's shoes. Can you not say that exact prayer talking to God, right? God, how long, O Lord, or have you forgotten me? I mean, I'm a me, right? You're a me. We can all say these same things. You don't really have to change the wordage in here unless you want to make it apply to you as well. So, very important. Now, let's jump out of the application side. Now, if I'm going to prepare a lesson, we've got 3 points here I can make. What is this first point? What is he doing here? We're going to put a section title or point title next to each one. What's he doing in this very first section in verses 1 and 2? Complaining. What else?
I said pleading for help.
Pleading for help. All right, so he's complaining, pleading for help. What is he doing in verses 3 and 4? Remember me. All right. Now, I'm just going to be honest. I want this to alliterate, so we need all C words here.
Consolation.
What is that?
Consolation.
Consolation.
Looking for consolation.
He's looking for consolation. I'm going to, that's big for me. Cry. All right, here's his cry for help. And then what is he doing in verses 5 and 6? Commanding, conceding. I heard something else. Y'all aren't wrong. Yeah. Comfort. All right, so we have our complaint, our cry, and our comfort. Maybe the ing threw me off. Here's our complaint. Here's our cry for help. And here's our comfort when we know that God really is going to comfort us. Right? And then you got 3 C's that everybody can then see, and you can put that on an outline. And yeah, other ways I've seen it, I'd had the complaint, call, and comfort. But yeah, so if I was just a guy who was preparing a sermon and I went to Psalm 13, that's probably what I would do. Don't worry, we're not going to do this morning. But that is helpful to me also because when I'm praying, when I'm doing anything, there are those times where I kind of want to structure. I don't want to say do this in a formal way, but sometimes in my prayers, all I can do is talk about the blessings that God has given me in my life. I don't actually get down to the real issues that I got going on. Nothing wrong with that, right? God has blessed me richly, and I should be thankful for that, and I often am. But sometimes I need to let him know I've got some stuff going on, right? Because if I don't let him know, what am I going to start doing? I'm going to start relying on my own counsel, right? So I need to let him know I've got stuff going on. So maybe at the very beginning, you're crying out to God, God, there's some stuff going on in my life, blah, blah, blah. And maybe you make some requests of him, God, I need this specific thing to have happen in my life. And that's what's so great about this prayer from this man is he had a specific thing he wanted done. He wanted his eyes to be lit up, whatever that was, whether it be to help him understand or to literally bring back his physical health. He had a specific request. Do we give God specific requests? Or are we often just like, God, I hope you'll bless me. God, I hope you'll help me feel better. What happens if God doesn't help me feel better, right? Can I feel better spiritually, right? Can I focus more on my spiritual life? I've been trying to do this, and this is what I love about this. He starts very negative, but how does he end? Positive, right? Try to end your prayer life with the positives, right? Something new I'm trying to do this year is be as positive as I can be, right? Sometimes I can get caught up in the negativity of the world, but my focus this year is to see positives in everything. That's wild to think about, But there's got to be a positive way. I had an instructor, you'll probably hear this a lot from me this year, an instructor tell us in school to be positive maniacs. And right after that class, we had our chapel, and I was leading the opening prayer in our chapel, and I prayed that we all be positive maniacs. People were like, whoa, what are you talking about, right? What if we were just all that positive? That would be awesome. And I want to be that person who people could possibly get sick of because I'm just so positive. That would be a goal of mine, is where people are like, don't want to hang around that guy anymore because he's annoying with how positive he is. Doesn't he know this world is going to end tomorrow? No, and if it does, hey, I'm going to heaven. There's my positive for you. And so, end positively in your prayer life if you can. Write out your prayers. Don't feel like you're an evil person for complaining to God. Any other questions or comments?
It'd be interesting to know how many times throughout the whole Bible that you see the same lesson repeated over and over. Even with Jesus,
Yeah.
in his prayer, not my will, but thine, how can you complain?
Yeah, Jesus spent time saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have to be sacrificed. That would be a long study, and I would hope I was a major positive person when I started that study. But yeah. All right, we will go ahead and end class there and get ready for worship.